This story begins in a world where every person has their own demon, embodying their soul and acting as both a companion and a friend. And this bond is sacred. The world is controlled by the all-powerful magisterium, which holds sway over everything except the northern wastelands, where witches dwell, safeguarding a prophecy about a girl who will come and change the established order. One day during a great flood, Lord Asriel brings a girl to Dr. Carn's college in Oxford and begs him to take care of her. 12 years pass. Lyra grows up and befriends a boy named Roger. Both of them have demons that have yet to settle on a fixed form and can take on any shape they please. This pair is wild and uncontrollable, and Lyra, on top of that, is an excellent rooftop climber. One day she takes her friend to an old crypt where she shows him the graves. She has long been fascinated by the question, why do demons disappear when a person dies? And neither of them knows what form their demons will take when they finally stop changing. Meanwhile, high in the mountains, Lord Asriel photographs the flickering lights of the northern aurora and makes an unexpected discovery, which he intends to present to the scholars of Jordan College. Sometime later, Lyra learns of her uncle Asriel's arrival and sneaks out of her lesson to greet him. She makes her way across the rooftops toward the guest parlor, while Dr. Carn fiddles with a golden compass in his office. Seeing Asriel, Carn hurries to the parlor as well and secretly pours something into the alcohol on the table, unaware that Lyra is watching from a slightly open window. As Asriel enters and pours himself a drink, Lyra bursts into the room, knocking the glass from his hand, and explains her actions. Asriel smashes the decanter and hides Lyra in a wardrobe so she can witness everything that will take place in the parlor. Later, a secret meeting begins, where Asriel reveals that his journey to the north was aimed at uncovering what happened to Grumman's expedition. He took 2 photographs there. The first clearly shows dust. Interestingly, children do not attract it, unlike adults. The second photograph reveals that the northern lights conceal a city in the sky. This proves the existence of multiple worlds, of which the magisterium controls only one. And these worlds are made visible by the very dust the magisterium has outlawed. Grumman found evidence of this and paid for it with his life. Asriel brought his severed head as proof and intends to continue his work against the magisterium. This argument is enough to secure funding for future expeditions. Meanwhile, in the city, a ceremony takes place marking the moment when a young Egyptian boy, Tony, gains his demon's final form, signifying his passage into adulthood. While everyone celebrates, Tony's younger brother, Billy, heads home alone. But on the way, the boy is kidnapped. Back at the college, Asriel carries the sleeping Lyra to her room, but she wakes up and starts asking questions about dust. However, her uncle insists that this is not a matter for children. At the same time, Dr. Carn tells a librarian about a prophecy foretelling a great betrayal that Lyra will have to commit, and no one can prevent it, as it will lead to the world's transformation. The next morning, Roger tells Lyra about Billy's disappearance, and she learns that the Egyptians are now searching for the missing boy. But just then, she hears about Asriel's departure and rushes to the courtyard, where her uncle's airship is preparing for takeoff. However, he categorically refuses to take her with him. Meanwhile, the Egyptians search the surroundings of Oxford, but Billy is nowhere to be found. Their leader, John Faw, and Elder Coram, confirm that the legend of priests who steal children is real, no matter how much others try to deny it. Back at the college, Lyra promises Roger that they will go north, whether with her uncle or without him. Meanwhile, in the magisterium, Father MacPhail and Magistrate Boreal discuss the news about Asriel, who has secured the necessary funds and will now undoubtedly spread heresy. This means they must stop him. At the same time, Marissa Coulter arrives at the college. She charms Lyra and offers her a position as her assistant. The girl agrees, but only on the condition that Roger comes with them. However, that very night, Roger is kidnapped, just like Billy. In the morning, Dr. Carn gives Lyra a golden compass and a lethiometer, which purpose is to reveal the truth. Receiving strict instructions to tell no one about the device, Lyra sets off in search of Roger. Meanwhile, a fleet of Egyptian boats sets out for London, where John Fogg hopes to find all the missing children. Lyra tells Marissa everything, and the woman suggests they go to London and search for Roger there. Lyra tries to consult the alethiometer for guidance, but doesn't understand how it works. She barely makes it in time for Marissa's airship departure. Upon arriving at Marissa's house, Lyra and Pan settle into their new room. Meanwhile, Roger is taken to where the other kidnapped children are held, where he reunites with Billy. The next day, Marissa tells Lyra that her best people are searching for Roger, then takes the girl to the Arctic Institute, promising to help her master power just as she herself did. Meanwhile, the Egyptians arrive in London and begin searching abandoned houses for the missing children. Marissa, however, starts molding Lyra into her own image, something Pan strongly disapproves of. At the same time, the Egyptians find Billy's clothes in an old kidnapper's hideout. The children have been moved elsewhere, but the question of why they were taken remains unanswered. Lyra, meanwhile, receives a new dress, though she fails to understand how it will help her acquire new powers. Elsewhere, Boreal visits Dr. Karn, demanding to see Grumman's head to confirm the possibility of interworld travel. Karn denies him access to the crypt. Back at Maurice's house, Lyra accidentally reveals that she knows about the Stardust, but hides the fact that she learned about it from Azrael. That same day, Billy's mother, Ma Costa, is brought his sweater, proof that the children had been in London. Meanwhile, the High Cardinal of the Magisterium informs Father MacPhail about the Egyptian's search and orders him to take control of the situation. That night, Pan hears strange noises in the pipes and wakes Lyra. She sneaks out to investigate and finds Marissa's demon in a distant room, even though she knows a demon cannot be so far from its master. However, Marissa convinces her it's a mistake. It becomes clear that the woman is angry but trying to maintain composure. Lyra returns to bed, realizing that Marissa is not who she pretends to be. At the same time, Boreal sneaks into the crypt and upon seeing the skull, realizes it is not Grumman's. He then steps through a portal into the streets of modern London, where his car and phone await him. Proof that he has known about other worlds for a long time and even lives among them. Meanwhile, Father MacPhail arrives at Maurice's house and she asks Lyra to stay in her room, but the girl disobeys and eavesdrops on their conversation about dust. However, one of MacPhail's men catches her, forcing Marissa to intervene. After the priests leave, Lyra decides to always carry the alethiometer with her and places it in her bag. Marissa notices this immediately. Irritated by Lyra's disobedience, she orders her demon to attack Pan, demanding that the girl behave. In her anger, she also lets slip that Azrael is, in fact, Lyra's father, not her uncle. For years, Lyra had believed that her parents died in an airship crash. This revelation stuns her, but when she asks about her mother, Marissa refuses to answer. Returning to her room, Lyra bombards the alethiometer with questions before throwing it aside in frustration when it gives no response. However, as she closes her eyes, the compass's needle begins to move. Meanwhile, Lord Boreal, now in our world, begins searching for Azrael, convinced that he might be there. Back at Marissa's house, she attempts to convince Lyra that Roger was never kidnapped and still lives at the college, having forgotten about her. This fails to sway the girl, who decides to uncover the truth. She searches the apartment, using the ventilation shafts to sneak into locked rooms. At the same time, Marissa visits the kidnapped children and announces that they will be going on a journey. Speaking with Billy and Roger, she forces them to write letters to their families, while Lyra sneaks into Marissa's office and finds documents about a sacrificial recruitment center. Billy writes a letter to his mother, and Roger writes one to Lyra, who, at that moment, is examining blueprints for a place called The Station, where the children are to be taken. She sees schematics of strange machines, but does not understand their purpose. Pan warns her that Marissa is returning, and Lyra barely makes it back to her room in time. Meanwhile, Boreal returns to his world and heads to a party at Marissa's house, where Lyra serves drinks to the guests. One of the women, a journalist, pulls Lyra aside and reveals the truth about the sacrificial recruitment centers and the fact that their members are called Devourers. She also tells Lyra that Marissa is in charge of them. Shocked, Lyra slips away. Spotting an open door, she seizes the alethiometer and flees while Boreal deals with the journalist, killing her demon in the process. Meanwhile, the kidnapped children are taken north, and Lyra is suddenly captured on the street by a stranger. She is thrown into a van and taken somewhere, where she is met by none other than the Egyptian, Tony. Meanwhile, Marissa mobilizes the police in a full-scale search for the escaped Lyra. She storms into Jordan College and discovers the Book of Symbols, which helps in reading the forbidden alethiometers. The scholar is forced to confess that he gave the alethiometer to Lyra. At that very moment, Lyra is brought aboard the Egyptian ship. Tony explains that he and the others witnessed her abduction, fought off her captors, and even took a prisoner who might reveal where the kidnapped children are being held. John Fott offers Lyra his protection, but she is determined to find Roger. Meanwhile, the Magisterium learns that Lyra might be with the Egyptians and sends the police after them. Lyra changes into Egyptian clothing and resumes studying the alethiometer. Ma Costa shows her a few tricks and assures the girl that she is safe with them. Later, the Elder Quorum also reassures her and discusses the way demons change as a person matures. Meanwhile, Boreal crosses over to London, where his agent shows him a photograph of Grumman, who turns out to be John Perry, a former Marine who disappeared 13 years ago in Alaska. Boreal refuses to believe that Perry crossed over from this world, as the photograph clearly shows him with a demon, something that does not exist in this world. But what if a demon can be gained by crossing worlds? John Perry's sick wife and child are still here, which might help in tracking him down. Back with Egyptians, Lyra tells them that she saw some kind of maps in Maurice's office, but the elder forbids her from going after the woman. Just then, an alarm sounds. Ma Costa hides Lyra in a secret compartment as the police search the ships but leave empty-handed. However, Lyra is convinced that she must leave. Ma Costa then reveals to her that she is the illegitimate daughter of Lady Marisa Coulter and that her father, Lord Asriel, lost his entire fortune after killing Marisa's husband. But he managed to steal his daughter and hide her at Jordan College. Meanwhile, Marisa sends out her spy beetles to track down Lyra. Boreal, on the other hand, gives his agent information on John Perry's family and orders him to find them. At the same time, John Fall gathers the Egyptians and proposes a mission to the north to rescue the kidnapped children. Some object, but Lyra steps forward and declares that she now knows who her mother is, and she will not stop until she finds the missing children. Coram suggests sailing to Trollhättan to seek the protection of the witches who inhabit the north. As the Egyptians disperse, Lyra tells Tony where Marissa's papers are hidden, then returns to studying the alethiometer. This time, she notices the movement of its needles. Meanwhile, Tony and his friends sneak into Marissa's apartment through the elevator shaft. However, just as they find the documents, Marissa's demon spots them. Tony manages to escape through the window, but Marissa shoots his friend with a revolver and tortures his demon, trying to extract information about who sent them. To protect the Egyptians' plans, the boy throws himself into the open elevator shaft and dies, while Tony barely manages to escape. At the same time, Lyra shows her alethiometer to the elder, but he insists that it takes years of study to use it properly. However, Lyra focuses her mind, sets the needles to the correct symbols, and discovers what happened. She rushes to Coram, but on the deck she is spotted by the spy beetles. Pan captures one, but the other escapes and flies toward Marissa. Just then, Tony returns and shows them a list of the kidnapped children. John Faw orders the fleet to set course for Trollhättan. The aeronaut Lee Scoresby is also heading to Trollhättan, searching for his old acquaintance, the armored bear Iorek Bernison. At the same time, the Egyptians arrive in the city. Coram and Lyra visit the witches' consul, who agrees to send a message to Serafina Pekkala, the queen of the witches. He also reveals the horrifying truth: the kidnapped children are to undergo a procedure that will separate them from their demons. The consul is willing to aid the Egyptians, but only if Lyra proves her ability to read the alethiometer. To do so, she must find a vial among hundreds, which contains a cloud pine sprig from Serafina Pekkala. Lyra pinpoints it with precision and receives the sprig as a gift. Now she can summon the witch at any time. Before they leave, the consul advises them to seek the help of an armored bear who works in Trollhättan. Lyra and Coram set off in search of Iorek Bernison, but the bear refuses to go with them. Meanwhile, Marissa is summoned to the magisterium, where she is punished for the destruction of Jordan College and removed from leadership of the Sacrificial Council. However, she counters with a revelation. She controls the king of the Panzerbjorn, who, under her orders, has taken Asriel prisoner. Back in Trollhättan, Coram confesses to Lyra that he and Serafina once had a son, but the boy died. As a simple human, Coram could not remain with a witch. Meanwhile, Scoresby inquires about Iorek Bernison at a bar, but mentioning bears is unwelcome, and he gets badly beaten for it. Later, Scoresby and Lyra meet at the port and realize they are both interested in the same bear. That night, Serafina's demon visits Coram, confirming that the witch will aid them in any way she can and will guide them on the right path. At the same time, Scoresby finally finds Iorek, but even to him, the bear refuses to explain why he cannot leave Trollhättan. Determined to help, Scoresby visits the mayor's office, attempting to present a purchase document, claiming that he himself is the rightful owner of Iorek's confiscated armor. However, the mayor denies the claim, despite Scoresby's reminder that Iorek is no one's slave. The next morning, Lyra learns that Asriel has been captured by King Iofor, the bear who usurped Iorek's throne. As for Iorek, he cannot leave because his sky-forged armor is hidden in the city, taken from him by the authorities. Lyra goes to Scoresby and asks him to join their expedition. He explains that to Iorek. His armor is like a demon to a human. Without it, he is incomplete. Using the alethiometer, Lyra discovers the exact location of Iorek's sky iron armor and tells him where to find it. Iorek charges into the chapel, reclaims his armor, and dons it. The mayor and his police force open fire, but Iorek attacks them. Just in time, Lyra and Scoresby arrive and convince the bear not to seek revenge, urging him instead to join the Egyptian expedition. Lyra brings the aeronaut and the armored bear to John Fall, and together they set off for the north, toward Bolvangar, as guided by Serafina's demon. Meanwhile, Marissa travels by airship to King Iofor. She offers him a baptism ritual in exchange for continuing to keep Asriel in prison and destroying Asriel's laboratory, where he was studying dust. Iofor is tempted by the idea of being the first bear to be accepted into the magisterium, and he agrees to Marissa's proposal. Meanwhile, Lyra and her friends continue their journey north, unaware that in another world, there is a boy whose fate is entwined with hers and the prophecy. Will Perry, an ordinary schoolboy from modern-day London, does not realize that his house has been under surveillance for some time. Boreal and his agent have discovered that the boy is the caretaker of his mother, Elaine, whose mental health has deteriorated since losing her husband. In Lyra's world, the Egyptian expedition heads toward the north, where Bolvangar holds the kidnapped children. Their path is guided by Seraphina's demon, Kaisa. Yorick Burnison helps pull the caravan, which also carries Score's beast balloon as birds watch from the skies above. Using the alethiometer, Lyra learns that the place they seek is guarded by an armed troop of Tartars. The alethiometer also warns her that something important lies in a nearby valley, a place she must go. However, the Egyptian leaders refuse to let her leave. Meanwhile, in the modern world, Boreal stops Elaine on the street and speaks to her. The woman is frightened by the stranger, who claims to be a friend of her husband, yet does not know that he has disappeared. At the same time, Will is at a boxing practice when Elaine suddenly arrives. One of the boys mocks her, prompting Will to knock him down. The coach breaks up the fight, but sympathizes with Will, urging him to go after his mother. Back in Lyra's world, she and Makos speak with Kaisa, who reveals the existence of other worlds and explains that Azrael found a way to cross into another world, which is why the Magisterium hunts him and keeps him imprisoned on Svalbard. However, King Yofor is playing a double game. While keeping Azrael captive, he has allowed him to continue his research. Unexpectedly, Kaisa supports Lyra's decision to go to the valley. That night, Seraphina herself visits Coram, telling him that Azrael is preparing for war and that the thin boundary between worlds will soon disappear. The witch promises that Kaisa will continue guiding the Egyptians and that whatever her demon sees, she sees as well. The next morning, John Frau is much more agreeable. He even suggests that Lyra go to the valley and assigns Yorick to accompany her. Meanwhile, in the modern world, Elaine tells Will that he looks just like his father and that he, too, will follow in his footsteps. Will assumes this is just another of his mother's episodes. However, Elaine suddenly notices that the rug in their house has been moved. She rushes to check a folder hidden under the sewing machine, containing letters from her husband that she has never mentioned to Will. Back in Lyra's world, during a rest stop, Yorick tells Lyra that he was exiled from Svalbard for killing another bear. Meanwhile, Will attempts to secretly take the letters, but Elaine allows him to read them, yet he refuses. At the same time, Lyra and Yorick reach the valley and find Billy in a fishing hut, but his demon is gone. It is now clear why the alethiometer called him a ghost. He is a human without a soul. Still alive, Billy is brought back to camp, but he dies in his mother's arms. That night, a cat enters Elaine's house, and she notices that someone is watching their home. Boreal's agent reports that before leaving on his expedition, Will's father left Elaine a financial deposit. This means that he knew he would be gone for a long time, perhaps forever. This also confirms that he knew about the window between worlds. If they want answers about where John Perry went, they must search his house. Back in Lyra's world, the Egyptians perform a funeral pyre for Billy and swear vengeance. That night, unknown attackers infiltrate the camp and kill the guards. Hearing the commotion, Lyra steps outside, only to be captured. She is taken away by sled dogs, regaining consciousness inside a facility, where she overhears her captors speaking to a female doctor in a language she does not understand. When the doctor addresses her, Lyra gives a false name, Lizzie Brooks. The doctor pretends to reach for Pan, but he quickly transforms into a moth and flies away. The doctor remarks that Lyra is still young, but on the verge of change, then orders the nurses to begin the procedure immediately. Lyra is assigned Category A and given a uniform identical to the one Billy wore. Horrified, she realizes where she is. This is Bolvangar. Later, Lyra is taken to the cafeteria where she spots Roger among the children. However, she restrains herself and does not reveal their acquaintance. Roger, too, remains cautious. During lunch, Dr. Cooper and the nurses take a girl away. She is led down the hallway, the door shuts behind her, and the sound of a reactor hums ominously, strangely affecting Sister Clara. Later, Lyra is taken to the laboratory for scans and examinations. She questions the doctors about dust and demon separation, but Dr. Cooper insists that this is a research facility, not a slaughterhouse for children. To the doctor's dismay, a fire drill interrupts the procedures. The children are evacuated into the courtyard, where a roll call begins. Roger warns Lyra to keep a low profile, but she throws a snowball, sparking a full-blown snowball fight among the children. Amidst the chaos, Lyra and Roger search for an escape route, the one Billy used when he fled. They discover cages filled with demons separated from their children and a room where the severed children are kept. They manage to return unnoticed and blend back into the crowd. Meanwhile, the doctors discuss their work's progress and Marissa's upcoming visit. Dr. Cooper argues that even if some children die, their research will soon free entire generations from the tyranny of sin, something that will surely please the Magisterium. That night, Lyra sleeps in the girls' dormitory. In the modern world, Will stumbles upon a decade-old interview with his father, recorded just before his final expedition. In it, his father announces his journey and mentions letters he planned to send his family, but Will has no idea that Boreal's agents are surveilling their home. The next morning in Lyra's world, the girls hear the noise of Marissa's airship landing. The doctors escort Marissa to the laboratory, informing her that some children no longer die immediately after the procedure and can now live without their demons. Terrified, Lyra confesses to the girls that Marissa is her mother and that she plans to rescue them all with the help of the Egyptians, who are already on their way. For now, she hides under the bed, pulling herself up with her hands. When Marissa enters the dormitory, she senses a heightened tension in the room. Her golden monkey begins sniffing around beneath the beds, but finding nothing suspicious, she leaves. Lyra tells the children to be ready to dress quickly when she triggers the fire alarm. However, before she can act, she is summoned to the laboratory, where her demon is captured. The pain overwhelms her, and she loses consciousness. Lyra and Pan are separated and placed in separate containment units. In agony, Lyra screams that she is Marissa's daughter and begs for her mother's help. At the last moment, Marissa shuts down the reactor, saving her. Later, Marissa gives Lyra chamomile tea, surprised that the girl already knows about their connection. She insists that she never abandoned Lyra, but rather she had to accept the fate her father had arranged for her. Marissa explains that dust is something foreign, that demons are merely amusing in childhood, but for adults, they become a source of turmoil and regret. Lyra pretends to be swayed by her mother's words. However, when Marissa begins questioning her about the alethiometer, Lyra hands her a tin containing a spy fly. The creature bites Marissa, causing her to collapse in shock. Lyra dashes out of the lab, jams the lock with a fire extinguisher, and activates the fire alarm. Roger leads the children, who get dressed and flee into the courtyard. As Lyra retrieves her winter clothes, Sister Clara tries to stop her, but Lyra forces her to remember her former demon, making her recall its name, Nicholas. Overcome with emotion, Sister Clara lets her go. Meanwhile, Roger returns to rescue the severed children and struggles to convince them to follow him. Lyra then breaks into the reactor chamber, determined to destroy it forever. She recalls Dr. Cooper's words that an active reactor with open vents would explode, and puts this theory into practice. The explosion is successful. Elsewhere, Marissa furiously searches for an escape route. Her golden monkey breaks open a ceiling vent, allowing her to climb through the air ducts and flee. Meanwhile, the children reach the main doors, but they are locked. Just as the doctors try to force them back inside, the Egyptians arrive. Ma Costa confronts Dr. Cooper, reminding him of Billy Costa's fate, then kills him and leads the children to safety. Lyra rushes into the heavily guarded Bolvangar courtyard, where a fierce battle rages between the Egyptians and the Tartars. Georg Bernison takes out the sentries from the watchtower. Dr. Cooper shouts to the guards, urging them to capture Lyra, but just when it seems hopeless, Serafina Pekkala arrives, swiftly eliminating the enemy. Watching from her hiding spot, Marissa realizes that the battle is lost, for now. The Egyptians gather the surviving children, including those severed from their demons, and load them into wagons to take them away. However, Lyra's mission is not over. She must rescue her father, Azrael, from the Panzerbjorn's captivity. With Roger and Yorick, she takes off in Scoresby's balloon, heading towards Svalbard. That night, Serafina arrives unexpectedly and tells Scoresby about a prophecy. Lyra has a great destiny in saving the world. Scoresby agrees to be her protector. Meanwhile, John Fa worries about whether the orphaned children will be accepted by their families, but Ma Costa reassures him, if their families reject them, they will become Egyptians and stay together. Suddenly, the airship is attacked by strange flying creatures. Iorek calls them cliff ghasts. Lee opens fire with his revolver, but the creatures squeeze through every gap, rocking the balloon violently. In the chaos, Lyra is thrown over the edge and plummets downward. Lady Coulter, left behind in the ruins of Bolvangar, stares at the destroyed separator and screams in fury, revealing a strange stinger inside her mouth. Later, she notices one of the nurses who, in her altered state, believes this is the best place in the world. The nurse does not know where Lyra has escaped to, and in her rage, Marissa nearly kills her. Meanwhile, Lyra, having fallen from the balloon into the snow, regains consciousness and tries to find her friends. However, she is captured by an armored bear and brought to the palace in Svalbard, where she is thrown into a dungeon. Using the alethiometer, Lyra discovers that Yorick is close and hurrying to rescue her. Suddenly, another prisoner speaks to her. He reveals that Azrael was also imprisoned here, but he managed to curry favor with King Yofor, who then allowed him to return to his laboratory. The prisoner laughs at Lyra's belief that Yorick will come to save her. The bears will never let him near the palace. Lyra cannot escape unless she can conjure a demon for King Yofor, something the Bear King desperately desires. The next morning, Lyra demands to see King Yofor. She tricks him, claiming that she herself is Oric's demon, created for him in Bobangar. Yofor is enraged. Marissa lied to him, never crafting a demon for him as promised. Lyra manipulates him further, stating that if Yofor fights Yorick in single combat, all of Yorik's strength and his demon's power will transfer to the victor. To convince Yofor, Lyra challenges him to ask her something only a demon would know. Yofor asks about the first creature he ever killed. Lyra hides behind a column, pulls out the alethiometer, and discovers that Yofor's first kill was his own father. Convinced, Yofor commands the bears to allow Yorick to approach, preparing for battle. Meanwhile, Boreal watches the same interview with John Perry that Will found, realizing that the key lies in the letters. He visits Elaine, taking advantage of her fragile mental state, and forces his way into her home. Boreal demands the letters, attempting to intimidate her by claiming to work for security services. However, Elaine demands a warrant for the search. At that moment, she catches a glimpse of a snake demon slipping beneath Boreal's collar and panics. Boreal pretends nothing is there, dismissing her as delusional. Yet, he is forced to retreat, ordering his men to retrieve the letters by any means necessary. Back in Svalbard, Yorick storms into this palace, and Lyra informs him that she tricked Yofor into challenging him. The two bears face off in the throne hall. Yofor grabs Yorick by the throat and begins overpowering him. Lyra rushes to help Yorick, and Yofor suddenly realizes that she is a liar. She is no demon. Furious, he lunges at her, but in a final desperate attack, Yorick counters, protecting Lyra, and Yofor falls, defeated. Impressed by Lyra's cunning, Yorick gives her a new name, Lyra Silvertongue. From this moment on, Yorick is the rightful king of Svalbard. Meanwhile, Elaine rushes to Will's school and tells him about a man with a snake who claimed that his father is alive. However, Will refuses to believe her. Back in Svalbard, Yorick announces to his subjects that from now on, bears will live as bears, not as humans, free from tyranny. He takes Lyra to the place where Scoresby had dropped off Roger. Using the alethiometer, Lyra confirms that Scoresby is still alive, although his balloon is damaged. Meanwhile, the Magisterium assembles a military expedition against the bears, with Marissa joining them in fury over the latest news from Svalbard. Father Hugh demands Azriel's execution. In Will's world, he and Elaine return home, only to find the house ransacked. Someone had searched through everything. Elaine begs Will to keep the letters safe, and he takes her to a neighbor, asking him to look after her. At the same time in Svalbard, Scoresby examines his damaged balloon when Serafina Pekkala arrives. She promises her aid and returns his lost revolver. Scoresby realizes that Lyra will need his help again soon. Meanwhile, Yorick escorts Lyra and Roger to Lord Azriel's house. Will retrieves his father's letters, which Boreal's agents fail to find. Just then, the agents return to the house. Will hides, then suddenly lunges out, whipping one of them with his belt buckle. The agent loses balance, trips over a cat darting between his legs, and falls from the second floor. Realizing he has just killed a man, Will flees the house. Back in Svalbard, Lyra and Roger arrive at Azriel's residence, where they are greeted by his servant. However, Azriel's reaction stuns them. Instead of welcoming Lyra, he coldly states that he never called for her and orders her to leave immediately. But upon noticing Roger, Azriel's demeanor suddenly changes. He loses interest in Lyra, and his eyes light up at the sight of the boy. Later, Azriel's demon reminds him that they now have everything they need. The aurora is at its peak, and the child has come to them willingly. Lyra attempts to give him the alethiometer, but Azriel refuses to even look at what his daughter has brought him. She demands to know why he never acknowledged her as his daughter, but he cuts the conversation short, telling her to keep the alethiometer for herself. Meanwhile, aboard the Magisterium's airship, Father MacPhail reprimands Marissa. He reminds her that she was once a brilliant, respectable woman with a promising future, until she threw it all away for Azriel. Marissa retorts that he is simply envious of them both. At the Magisterium, Boreal uncovers new information. The alethiometer has pointed to a knife capable of cutting through the boundaries between worlds. This knife is said to be kept in the Tower of Angels and must be retrieved by Grumman's son. However, the Magisterium believes Grumman never had a son, but Boreal knows otherwise. Will Perry exists. He keeps this revelation to himself. That night, Roger confesses that he is afraid of Azriel, having noticed the strange way he looks at them. In modern-day Oxford, Boreal learns that Will has fled. He scolds his remaining agent, who turns out to be a police officer, and orders an official manhunt for the boy. At Azriel's house, Lyra suggests using the alethiometer to see what awaits them, but Roger refuses. He doesn't want to know his future. Instead, he thanks Lyra for changing his fate. That night, Azriel wakes Lyra and reveals the truth about dust. According to the Magisterium, dust falls from the sky and corrupts souls with sin. The scholars discovered that dust only settles on people after puberty, linking it to the biblical story of Adam and Eve, who, after eating the apple, were destined to become like gods, knowing good and evil. The magisterium convinces people that they are born guilty, forcing them to spend their entire lives repenting for imaginary sins. However, dust is not evil. It is a measurable, documentable, and even photographable elementary particle. It has been used as a tool to control, suppress, and frighten people into submission. Lyra finally understands her mother's goal. By severing demons from their humans, she wants to keep souls free of sin. But the very thought of Pan being cut from her fills Lyra with horror. Azrael explains that demon separation creates a massive energy release. This is why understanding dust is the most crucial question in existence. He then shows Lyra a photograph of the aurora, where another world is hidden beyond it. Azrael believes he can open a gateway to this world. The alethiometer, too, functions using dust. Remembering this, Lyra prepares to give Azrael the alethiometer and take Roger home. But Azrael rejects it once again and goes to bed. Lyra, too, falls asleep. She wakes to the sound of approaching airships. Azrael's servant warns that the magisterium is coming and they must flee. Only then does Lyra realize that Roger is missing. The servant is forced to confess Azrael has taken the boy. Desperate, Lyra calls for Yorick Bernison, who gathers a group of armored bears and races after Azrael's trail. Meanwhile, Marissa and her soldiers arrive at Azrael's house, only to be confronted by his armed servant. She engages him in conversation, reminding him how Azrael had treated them both. The servant hesitates to shoot her. Looking over Azrael's schematics, Marissa realizes that his calculations involve a demon separation process, one that would cause a massive energy surge. In Will's world, he wanders through the city, searching for shelter, but finds himself surrounded by police patrols. Meanwhile, the Magisterium's fleet catches up with Lyra and the bears, opening fire. The armored bears fight back, while Yorick speeds Lyra toward the mountain. At the summit, Azrael brings Roger to the highest peak, the boy unaware of the danger ahead. He believes that Azrael has planned some kind of surprise for Lyra. But suddenly, Azrael seizes him and locks him in a cage. Roger finally realizes the horror of what is happening. This is exactly what happened at Bolvangar. He begs Azrael not to do this, but the man coldly states. At the summit, she spots Roger. With her last strength, she climbs the icy slope and reaches the cage. At that moment, Azrael drops the guillotine between Roger and his demon. Lyra is seconds away from reaching them, but a sudden explosion hurls her backward. Azrael's experiment succeeds. The barrier between worlds is shattered, opening a portal to another universe. Marissa arrives just in time to witness it. Azrael points to the sun of another world. He invites Marissa to join him, saying that together they can overthrow the authority and rebuild life from the ground up. But Marissa refuses. This is his journey, not hers. Her place is with their daughter. Azrael steps into the new world, leaving Lady Coulter behind. She glances at Roger's lifeless body in the cage, then walks away, not noticing Lyra nearby. Meanwhile, Will, still hiding from the police, stumbles into an alleyway. Alone, Lyra pulls Roger's body from the cage and weeps over her lost friend, blaming herself for his death. Pan suggests that her purpose must be to protect Dust, meaning she must follow her father. Lyra leaves Roger's body before the glowing rift. Nearby, Will is drawn to a cat that disappears behind something invisible. He crawls after it and sees something extraordinary. Lyra steps through the rift, entering the brilliant golden light. Will hesitates, pulling his hand away from the transparent barrier. But as a police siren wails in the distance, he makes his choice. He steps into the unknown substance and vanishes from his world. A captivating adventure based on Philip Pullman's legendary trilogy, this visually stunning series fully immerses the audience in the atmosphere of parallel worlds. From the gripping plot to the outstanding performances, everything feels meticulously crafted. Particularly impressive are the special effects and costumes, which create the enchanting aesthetic of a modern fantasy epic.